activity is an activity where we will be using maps to show our own personal connections with climate change in our very own lives, in places that are special to us. The purpose of this activity is threefold. First, we want you to reflect and have a space and a way to reflect on the changes that have occurred in your life in a place that's very special to you. The second goal is to explore maps as a way to communicate a story about climate change. And the third is to provide a basis for sharing our observations across our Arctic and Earth Science community. We each have our individual experiences with climate change, but we also can look for patterns across all of the students in this class's experiences with climate change to look for maybe some patterns that might emerge. Now, maps, they're a really powerful way to share stories. It's no surprise that a lot of books, my husband, he loves these sci-fi books, and each sci-fi book has a map in the front of it because it helps the author tell a story that's going to unfold throughout the book. And even my daughter, she's only 4 years old, but she'll be like, Mom, give me a piece of paper. And then she'll start doing stuff like this. And you're like, well, what is that, Izzy? And she says, it's a map. And then she'll start dictating a story from her squiggles, like, and then my monkey, Curious George, he walked along this line, and then a whole story can emerge from her illustration of a map. We can use maps in science as well, and in studies that are interdisciplinary, that integrate social science and natural science, to explain and tell stories about the way that the Earth has changed and our places have changed. Maps are also a very powerful way to visualize data and tell stories from data. This map was produced from data that was collected by a NASA Nimbus 7 satellite, and it shows a really interesting story about sea ice. The sea ice, this is a map of the sea ice extent on September 16th, 2012, and this is the minimum sea ice extent for that year. They're showing this because it was a shocking story. This map is telling us the yellow line here was the average minimum extent. So the average minimum area when sea ice is its smallest in the fall time, after the summer heat has kind of whittled it away, that's the average for as long as satellites have been orbiting the Earth and collecting data on sea ice. That was the average. In 2012, this was the smallest amount of sea ice ever recorded, the minimum of the minimums. And that was a really big story. When you look at a map like this, you say, wow, look at the difference. And look at all that dark, heat-absorbing area that's now exposed that hasn't been historically. The sea ice here, it usually is reflecting the heat energy, and the dark is absorbing now where it used to be reflecting. And so that is a big story for the overall temperature of our planet and for global climate change. Other stories that this map tells is it makes you start to wonder what are the consequences for animals that depend on sea ice for habitat. Animals like polar bear or walrus. I think about my sister who lives in Shishmaref as well. She's a teacher there, and the sea ice has historically protected that community from storm surges and erosion. And today, the erosive forces on the coastline there are causing that community to think about having to relocate their village. The school that she teaches in is getting closer and closer and closer to the shoreline because the sea ice protection has decreased. So maps, powerful ways to share data and tell stories that affect wildlife and people and our global climate system. Zooming in, here's another map that tells a powerful story. This is a map that was made by Mimi Chapin here in Fairbanks, and she used colors to show the relationships between people and Alaskan cultures and our land resources. She put a map of the permafrost, its continuous, discontinuous, and sporadic distribution across the state. Our ecoregions, the types of vegetation that are in the different regions of Alaska. She put Arctic tundra in the blue and subarctic tundra in yellow and orange. She put the boreal forest region in the greens. And then she matched those colors to our language groups. This is a classic language map of Alaska. And she showed how connected through these colors. It was a powerful way to tell this story, how connected that the cultures were with certain types of vegetation. And those vegetation, in turn, are connected to the extent and distribution of permafrost in Alaska. So this is an important way to show the connections through map between people's lives and the land that we live on. And we too can use maps to show our connection, our personal connection between our lives and things that we have observed changing in places special to us. So your assignment is to draw a map of a place that is really special to you, that is in your heart, that you know like the back of your hand, and illustrate some way, in any creative way that you can think of, how it has changed. Maybe as a result of climate change, or any other, could be social change like population increase or more houses being built, or something like that. Here's an example of my own home in my map. Here's my house, and we have a little ravine right here, and here's our stairs. And a few years ago, it rained so heavily that we had a big washout of so that we'll say like 2014, there was the washout from the rains. And my husband, he had to redo the foundation of our house because it started to tilt. And now when you roll a ball, one of my kids rolls a ball in our house, it goes down to that corner still. So that was one change. Before that, in 2013, the ball stayed. In 2014, now it rolls. And so this is a way for me to tell the story of how that change in weather, that unusually heavy rain season, affected my own life. And you can add as many changes as you want. When we had our second child, and we knew, better build the sandbox. There's the sandbox and that's in 2015, we needed to add the sandbox. So all sorts of changes incorporated into your map. In another example, Mike, one of the other instructors for this course, he has been a ship captain in Antarctica, and he might draw how his landing spot, and he actually did draw this when he took the course with me. He drew his landing spot on his ship, and he would have to pull into that landing spot, and then he had more ice or less ice, and he illustrated all of that in his map and showed that change to a place that he knew really well. So, all right, your assignment is to draw your own map of a special place to you, anywhere you want in the world, really special, and how it has changed ecologically, socially, or a combination of the both, and post that map on the Arctic and Earth Science Google Plus community website. And you can do that by taking a photo of your map and posting it, or you can draw it online if you have a tool that you'd like to use. You could also sketch it on paper and scan it. So somehow post your map on the Google Plus website.